So it's really getting out of that analytical left-brained place and connecting with the body and just listening.
Yes, because many times the listening will reveal what else is happening on underneath. Oftentimes, because one of the things that happens, even a simple common knee pain, can simply be the body saying, you know what, you've taken on too much and it's time to slow down for a while. It can be that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And we oftentimes don't realize that we've pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And when the body says, I've had enough, it's going to create something to make it enough, to slow you down. So we can choose to listen and hear that and navigate that within ourselves and really know, hey, I need to back off and just pay attention and be quiet for a while, or slow down my pace, or I can keep going, and then the body creates an injury that says, all right, you didn't listen, I'll make you slow down.
You will slow down. So can we just go back a little bit, Teresa? I'm curious about your take on what a trauma is, because I started off by talking about a series of events that can happen which potentially on the outside are simply, in inverted commas, just life happening. So what would you consider a trauma to be?
So in my experience, what I share with my clients is that a trauma is any experience that creates a high emotional impact on us. So it's not necessarily something that someone else might perceive as bad or negative. It could simply be something that you, as a person, felt a high emotional impact around. And what I mean by that is, for example, when we as children have things happen to us, and I kind of want to share a story around this, okay? Is that all right?
Yeah, please do.
So, for example, I have a client that when she first came to me for a couple of things, but two in specific. One was headaches, and the other was an allergy that she had to milk. And it was really a horrific allergy. And those are the two things that she first came to me. Well, as we worked with her, come to find out, and I was just exploring, and the way that I work is I really ask the body what wants to be revealed, what wants to be balanced, what wants to move to even more towards wholeness here. As we were working with that, one of the things that was revealed was the fact that she was actually, as a child, was in a position where she was commonly left to be able to do things that were unusual for a child her age. So, for example, she was the one at 5 years old, literally, who was having to help with cooking, help with cleaning the dishes up, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but and if there was one, and if she got anything that was not completely like in alignment with what her parents thought, she was fussed at. And so in her body mind, she took on this thing of every time someone fussed at her, even if they didn't yell at her, she had taken on this thing that everything had to be perfect. Or she would get reprimanded. Now, we in our adult state might think, well, a reprimand is just teaching a child how to do something and teaching them what their role is in that particular domain. Well, in her mind, that reprimand was like, I'm going to really be hurt. Something bad is going to happen if I don't get things perfect. Mm-hmm. And that showed up in different ways throughout her life because that got embedded in her nervous system around, if I don't do it perfectly, then I'm going to be in trouble. Even though she was never hit as a child, she literally, just the mere tone of voice from a reprimand would put her body into a freeze state. And so when she came to me, she was like, I just don't know what's going on. I keep getting these headaches, and I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I can't move any farther, and I don't know what to do. And so through the process of uncovering these places that to an adult would not have seemed that horrible, but to a child it was, and seeing how those events and got recreated in her life, because she didn't understand as a child that through her body she just kind of shut down, because when there's those experiences of trauma, we often shut down because it doesn't feel good. And so there's fear that's involved. And so through working with that and helping her really what I call de-trigger and deactivate the experiences that were triggering her so that they just became a file in her memory and not an active file. Kind of like in your computer, you have files that are up and open and you're working with them, and then others that are just kind of like dormant and you may never ever have to access them again. So once we worked with those triggers in her life, her headaches completely went away, like completely. And then we began working with aspects around her allergies with milk, which was completely different. It actually was something, as we traced it back, when she was about 8 years old, she had a dog, and when she was outside with her dog ran into the road and got hit by a car. Well, in that moment, she was eating an ice cream cone. And so from then on, whenever she would have anything with milk in it, her body was remembering the trauma that she felt from having lost her dog while having dairy. And so this is the same client, two different instances and types of trauma, one that doesn't seem a trauma initially and the other that is an apparent real trauma. But working with that and deactivating those memories in the body allowed her to completely get rid of her headaches and to help her be kinder to herself, not feel like she had to be perfect all the time, and allow her to eliminate her milk allergy.
Absolutely fascinating. And I like the way that you mentioned as well, one of them was very seemingly apparent, the other one not apparent, but the body had stored it and kept hold of it all.
Yeah.
And so what were the kinds of things that you did to support her? So our audience is very familiar with EFT and matrix re-imprinting, and I know that you use EFT, Teresa, but what are the kinds of modalities that you used with her, for example?
So with her, and I do use EFT and various modalities, with her in that particular case, and it really is different to the individual depending on what is being revealed. I actually was using an energy technique that includes feeling into the body that, number one, is based on how to see the body as whole already and not broken. And this is really key when it comes to trauma resolution, because if we stay stuck in the idea that our body is wounded, it perpetuates the wounding sometimes and doesn't create the breakthrough as easily for ourselves to move into wholeness, to experiencing wholeness. If we take the concept that we're already whole, and where can we build on that wholeness to highlight that even more, then it oftentimes, in my experiences, it allows us to move through things much more quickly. And so we were working with a couple of different systems, but what I ideally do is I have a protocol that I use that says, okay, what part of the body wants to be balanced first? In what order does this body want to be balanced, this body-mind? Because you could have this 3 people show up with the exact same symptoms, but yet the way their body-mind needs to be balanced might be different. So I use a protocol that says, in what order does this want to be balanced, and what needs to be balanced first? And then feeling into that so that as we work with it, oftentimes the client then says, "Oh my God, I'd completely forgotten about this." So you're asking what modality. I really use a combination of modalities, but in this particular case, we were using a system called the AccuNect system, which really focuses on that place of wholeness. And that is really where I come from when I'm working with people automatically. What's the place of wholeness that we can build on? What's the place that's complete already that we can build on? And that particular modality is a modality that does incorporate tapping as well to be able to help access the frequencies of the body to be able to change the meridians and how the health of the meridians is allowing the body's response to move more completely towards wholeness.
Now, I'm really curious about this. I love this idea of wholeness, and I'm also very intrigued by the role of the subconscious. So what if there's an immediate block of, it's impossible for me to consider my body being whole because I'm in pain and I'm feeling this and so on, and whatever the story is. So how do you kind of gently maneuver around that and embrace all that belief system?
So that's actually a really great question, and I'm very glad that you brought it up. Because in the body, okay, belief, if there's this deep-rooted belief that I can't even see myself as whole, then it's very unlikely that you can create that spontaneous healing on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't see outside of your own mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
you can't
absolutely.
really see other than what you see. We all have these beliefs and perceptions and ways of being in the world that do get us stuck, which is why it's important to have other people around us that can give us a different perspective. So if someone truly believes that they can't see themselves as whole at all, what in my experience is, if they truly can't see any piece of that, it's unlikely that they're going to seek help. If there's even a glimmer, like the hint of a glimmer of their possibility of knowing that there's wholeness somewhere within, then they tend to seek out help. And that help may be in the form of reading or asking someone, how do you see me? Or seeking out a professional like yourself or myself to be able to really see what's possible for them. Because when we're working with this concept of beliefs, if we're so stuck in the belief, then oftentimes we really need to have someone else outside of us that is able to say, but this is really what's happening. This is really what's going on instead. Because our beliefs, our perceptions are kind of like sunglasses that we don't know that we're wearing. But having an outside person that can change, that can observe something different, can create the possibility for us to be able to say, oh, I never thought about it that way. Maybe that is true.
Okay, so then that's a really interesting perspective. So if there's even a glimmer of a suggestion from within that they are whole, then they will be open to receiving the healing. But
right, and it may not be something that they're even aware that there's a glimmer of.
That's right.
But
yes.
They would not be seeking out help, truly, if they didn't on some level have an awareness, even if it's a subconscious level. So just like there's these subconscious things that hold us back and create illness and disease in the body, there's also the subconscious level that pushes us to say, but there's got to be something different. And we don't always realize that the subconscious can work not only for our detriment, but for our benefit.
Beautiful. Okay, so in that case, how does your work? How do you integrate your work around, because, I mean, the essence of our show today is around the body being in balance. So how can a person feel balanced about life, particularly if they're perceiving their life to be very highly stressful at the moment, Teresa? So how can they feel safe when they're experiencing the different things that life is presenting to them?
So if someone is saying to themselves, I don't feel balanced and I don't feel safe, then one thing that they can immediately do, and this may sound a bit crazy, okay, and I wish I could see you right now, but one thing that they can immediately do is literally take a hand on each side of their head, right above their ears, with the palm right at where the temple is, and the fingers pointing back. And if you think about it, oftentimes when we feel stressed or we feel really like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? We kind of put our hands on our head like, oh, what do I do here? But if we do that consciously and just place your hands there and just take a breath into it, now the breath does play a part, but letting the conscious mind, like, pay attention to that part of the brain. It's like you're really inviting the brain to come into a place of balance, because the reason we're feeling stress is because we're not accessing our balance. And if our sense of balance, not just balance physically, but our sense of balance emotionally and mentally and spiritually. And so just placing the two hands on the side of the head and taking a breath in and then tapping on the top of the head and on the heart can automatically create the brain to start looking for another way that can help to feel a sense of balance and ease in the body. And that's just one simple thing. The other thing that can be done is, if there's a sense of feeling really unsafe or not at ease, asking the simple question of, what if I were at ease? How can I know that I'm at ease right now? It creates a sense of looking at things in a different way, because we can get so bogged down to what's happening right now. And I want to share that there's this thing of being present in the moment that's absolutely important, because if we're truly present in the moment, there is this overwhelming sense of presence and balance and peace. But when we're not present in the moment, we're worrying about what is, what ought to, what should be, what could be, what has been, all those things that takes us out of what's happening right now in my body. How can I know that I'm safe? Well, my feet are on the ground. Or I feel my back against the chair. Or I know I'm safe because I'm breathing. No one has their hands around my neck. No one's pointing a gun at my head, and I'm kind of being a little bit extreme here. But sometimes it's that simple thing. How do I know that I'm safe right now?
And then when a person goes through that list, that almost like that shopping list of realizations, what actually happens in the body?
Well, when what happens is the body starts to look for the evidence of how you're actually safe. If you're looking at all of the fears, the body's responding to the fears. If you're asking a question that says, how can I know that I'm safe right now? How can I allow myself to be really present? The body starts to find a way for that to happen, because it wants to support us. It automatically wants to support us and let us feel our sense of wholeness.
Beautiful. So then, So are we then coming out of the freeze response that we've gone into?
Either the freeze response or the fight or flight response.
Yeah,
because it could be either one. It could be a freeze response or a fight or flight response.
Okay.
And coming out of that is really, really important, because if we stay in that cycle, then the nervous system stays in a perpetual state of being re-traumatized over and over and over and over again.
Yes.
And this is seen multiple times in indigenous cultures that have experienced horrific things with the coups d'etats that have happened and the wars that have gone in their country, but they can they can bounce back from that in a different way, because a lot of these indigenous cultures have been taught so completely how to be present that they can actually let themselves move those experiences through the body that allow them to show up in their life still full and complete, instead of holding on to it and being re-traumatized over and over and over again by a thought or a feeling or an idea that may or may not be there anymore.
So, Teresa, you mentioned about placing our hands over our temples, and I was doing that as you were walking us through it. Is there anything else that you can offer us? So in the moment, somebody can start this process that you've described to us.
Well, that is one to be working with.